the idea that a man is just going to dress like a woman so that he can enter the female bathroom and violate her. Like, that's not going to happen. If that was going to happen, it would have been happening for the first 20 some odd years of my life.
I think it's... Let me go ahead and hit the record button because otherwise things will get lost there. But how are you doing? I think the last time we had a extended conversation for any time was, I think, back when a particular individual I won't name for reasons was doing a harassment campaign that we had both been a part of at one point. If you remember.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically, because anything that happened 5 years ago, I'm just like, so many stupid things were happening in my life that it's all just kind of like molded together.
I sent you the name in DM.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
I see. Yeah. I don't have a Voldemort kind of approach to that person in particular, although I do understand the like not even bothering to give them the time of day kind of power.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at there.
I'm still being mentioned actively in that person's content as of like a month ago.
I have no idea if I am or not.
Yeah.
The last time I spoke about them was showing. I have screenshotted of an entire thing on Twitter where they gave me like 14 points of apology that I needed to do to make up my sins to the trans community.
Right.
I was like, okay, we're done.
Like, sure, yeah, I'm definitely gonna do that.
It's like, let me just grovel for a minute here. That's okay. We're in good hands now.
Yeah, I won't go into more detail, but there's like a power play thing with that person with every single situation.
Oh yeah. Yeah, in your chat, Veronica Fox, Suris and Lux, what is this, a crossover episode? No,
oh
not at all.
I just watched BoJack through yet again, and it's such an amazing show.
I still need to actually watch the show. I haven't seen it yet.
Highly recommend. It's really difficult material. I'm not gonna lie. It's really hard to get through, but I think it's amazing and it's worth it, and it gets better like on every rewatch. Yeah.
I've heard that it's definitely one of those things that like as you watch the show, it digs itself deeper and deeper into the psyche of the characters, and that's what makes it.
Yeah, and like it's very clearly written in such a way that there was a plan the whole time. Yeah. It doesn't really feel like each season everything is random. There's like little phrases that get repeated and that you don't notice until you've watched the show through several times. Anyway, yeah, it's been a long time since we chatted. I feel like I'm doing okay as much as I can compared like with all the fascism. Like how's stuff in your world? I feel like you just constantly have shit happening.
Because I'm recording this, I don't want to get into all the shit that has happened recently. Though I did recently do literally a rescue mission. Years ago, there was a homeless trans girl in my audience who needed help. I had a very small community at the time. We did a fundraiser. It was not enough, but it was enough to give hope, but not enough to fix the problem.
Sure.
My community being bigger now and me being infinitely more stubborn than I was 5 years ago. This time I just went, okay, so here's what's going to happen. Obviously, things have not worked out the way that they needed to. You're not homeless anymore. You're in my home now. Secondly, we're getting all of your legal paperwork taken care of. I'm driving you to all the places we need to do so. Thirdly, we're going to be doing that fundraiser again. Turns out I didn't need to do the fundraiser. I did an announcement video about going down to Florida to pick her up, and then like that video alone raised enough money without me doing an official fundraiser at all, which was insane because like the plan is getting them moved to New Zealand, and unfortunately New Zealand has a couple of laws about their visas, one of which is that you have to walk in with at least $1,500 in your bank account so that you are not an economic burden when you walk in, because you're not allowed to work for the first 2 weeks that you get there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's an entire bit of like immigration red tape. So we're just like, okay, cool. So we've got to have enough money for the plane ticket for you. We have to have enough money for your paperwork, your visa, and enough money for this arbitrary law. And then we can think about doing everything else. Luckily, all of that was raised literally as I was driving down, and that made all of this super, super easy. That was the last major event that has happened outside of all of the other little ones that my stream knows about. Past that, it's just been honestly, it's just been very tiring. I don't know when my channel flipped into an almost exclusively talking about trans issues channel. And then it just, there was the atheism content, and then that bled into the political content, and then politics in the last 2 years got almost entirely just saturated with anti-trans legislation. And so now we're just kind of here.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I mean, I did a similar thing. I don't know if people realize this, but you know, I'm a very trans-oriented creator. But when I first was doing activism in general, I started in the atheist skeptic community. And
because like we met when you were on non-sec years ago when that terrible shit happened.
Yeah, it was interesting is that was my second time around in the atheist community. I'm talking like 12 years ago, I was a blogger on Teen Skeptic. So that's like way back in the day as far as atheist activism goes, back when it was blogs and the YouTube sphere hadn't quite caught around yet. So I went from atheist stuff to, there was a schism about like sexism. I don't know if you or your audience really remember, like there was a big, like, these people are doing sexual harassment against the women in the movement, and we've had a whisper network for years, and so now we're just going to start coming out.
Oh, that was
and
when
telling
like
people.
That was when like the ACA had all of its fractures within it, right? Or was that just tangentially?
That was actually later. Like
okay.
I think I feel like the biggest ACA debacle that I can recall was the one over trans issues, essence of thought, and rationality rules a few years back. Yeah, the trans women in sports conversation. So that was when I tried to get back into atheism after feeling like the hardcore purism SJW people, and like the fact that if you make one tiny little mistake, if you ask the wrong question about cultural appropriation, you could end up like completely kicked out of the community.
I've noticed that's actually died down quite a bit. Maybe it's just because we've got, I hate to say this in a way that might get me canceled, but quite frankly, we have bigger issues now. I think that might just be the thing that has shifted that a little bit.
I kind of feel like the rise of the dirtbag leftist is emerging, like communities where maybe we don't want to be totally edgy dirtbags, but it is kind of creating some amount of gray area middle ground between being super like hardcore purist, you know, you can't ask the wrong questions, like we're gonna call you racist over everything and not bother explaining why, versus like people who are edgy, who are saying the R slur, like, you know, that created like a place where I can exist in the middle ground.
Yeah, and I think that's I don't know if that's necessarily where I sit. I think I probably sit somewhere where you are in the middle ground there, because I don't use a lot of the more edgy, sometimes ableist language in my content, but I will say things that are very, very bombastic, that people are just like, let's be like, yeah, I support abortion. Why? Because I have a baby cannon that needs ammunition. What the fuck do you want from me?
Exactly.
And then just like,
jokes.
and just like, that's, you know, it's stuff like that where like, I live in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district in Georgia. So like, I know that saying that out loud here is, well, that's a quick way to get beaten up. But, but luckily I've got a straight flush of privileges being a cishet white guy. That, you know, it insulates me from at least some of that a little bit, because I can just walk around and be like, yeah, no, I'm a Southern Christian conservative like all of you guys. Trust me.
Yeah, trust me.
And then
I don't have that privilege, unfortunately. People are like, I try to talk about mainstream politics and people are like, what is with this thing's voice? And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get it, all right? I'm not voice training. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, no, it's certainly... What's funny is that like I started taking singing practice, and I found out that like most of the fundamentals for learning how to sing properly are the exact same ones you use for voice training.
Yeah, that's I I like to do a chimera. Like I'll just change. I'll put my voice in a place where I'm like, this is very much a trans girl's voice, and then I'll pull it all the way back and be like, and this is how I talk when I'm singing country music, like like Tim Faust. This is the early morning voice, is what we like to call it.
The pre-coffee voice.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you got all the vocal fry in it for sure.
Yeah, we're just like, how's it going, everyone?
Yeah. It's all sub vocalization.
Yeah, that's my I have a cold and I don't have energy to pretend I don't voice.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So what I wanted to get into is I've had a few people in my comment section, because since I do the VTuber thing, it does get very easy for people to slide into my channel who consider themselves apolitical. And then when I'll say, like, hey, by the way, trans rights are in danger, most of my established audience are just like, yeah, we know. Mm-hmm. But then those people who are new to my audience, or who are new to this space, are like, what are you talking about? And they just will have no idea. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go ahead and get a baseline video out there that we would be able to use as a signpost, so that because I did the similar thing when I talked about human rights, when I went over, like, hey, this is what the UN calls a human right. This is why the United States needs healthcare. It's literally in there twice, but, you know, if you can't read, I guess you can't see it there. That's what you get when you play Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah. Oh, no.
What, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players can't read? That's not their fault.
They got the numbers. They can do the math. That's all they need.
Yeah, they're just like, it's probably lethal, swing.
Yeah, they can add and subtract.
But I did want to go over, you know, when we say the words trans rights, what rights are we specifically talking about? And probably more importantly right now, in what ways have those rights been threatened? Because it's one thing when I can say, like, hey, by the numbers, we have more anti-trans bills in the United States than we have days in this current year that have released in this current year, whether or not they've passed. Like, it's one thing to be able to say that as a hipfire thing, but, you know, what do they usually entail? So I guess we'll start with, in your estimation, what are trans rights? What are the rights that are very specific to trans people that maybe most cis people aren't aware of, that are required to just exist?
Yeah. I think that people often have this idea, and this goes back to the gay marriage thing, if you're old enough to remember that conversation. I got some Zoomers in my chat who might not know what it was like, that people used to say stuff like, you know, you have the right to get married just like everybody else. And so, you know, if, you know, for trans healthcare, for example, it's like, well, you know, cis people have the right to cross-sex hormones? Why do trans people need the right to that? Like, everybody has the right to certain kinds of healthcare. Why do you get special whatever? So, like, I do think that there's this idea that people have in their heads that the way that things are is just fine, and why do you need something different? I think it's very family sitcom-y. The goal of every episode is to get back to the status quo at the end of the episode. Please, let's go back to brunch. Yeah, nothing changes. Yeah, exactly. Go back to brunch.
There's an allegory that I've heard for this a billion times, and I guess I want to run it by you, see how it fits. But it's comparing it to classes of people, going like, hey, it is equally illegal for a very wealthy person and a very poor person to sleep under a bridge. However, the reality is there's only one of those people that illegality actually affects.
Right, yeah. Like, I read someone saying that they were dating an affluent man who parked in a no parking zone, and when the date said, like, hey, you can't park here, he said, yeah, of course I can. It just costs $150. Like, so something that is punishable with a fine is only realistically illegal and harmful to people with lower income. That's called a regressive punishment, or like regressive financial protocol. So for trans people, like, what are some rights that trans people have, or that we need, or that are being threatened? You know, for my entire lifetime, we have had the right to use whatever public bathroom we want. People don't realize that there is no actual law. When you if you see the signs on the doors, there is nothing. Until 2016, there was not a single law in this entire country that actually said that there was any legal distinction between these two spaces, these two sexed spaces, kind of distinct from how there were, I believe that there were actual laws surrounding, like, colored water fountains and restrooms
Yeah.
versus for white people. So it's a separate but equal type situation that they want to create. And so we're losing the right to use the bathroom. If there was going to be a problem, as so many gender critical activists say, as so many TERFs say, the idea that a man is just going to dress like a woman so that he can enter the female bathroom and violate her. Like, that's not going to happen. If that was going to happen, it would have been happening for the first 20 some odd years of my life.
I think it's also very telling that so the very conservative crowds, or sometimes the centristy crowds that are just really, really concerned, they tend to have views on things like guns that align with, hey, by the way, you can't get rid of guns in America because if you make them illegal, then only the bad people will have the guns.
Right.
Okay, cool. This exact same logic applies to the bathrooms. If the people you are trying to prevent from going into the bathroom and harming people are people who would commit sexual assault is already illegal. They're not going to give a crap that there is one more layer of bureaucratic tape that they can't see, feel, nor have to acknowledge. It's not gonna stop anybody. If that even was the case.
And there is a pretty decent evidence-based past of adult men preying on young boys in the bathroom. So it kind of seems like if your issue here is men preying on people, then you need to have a men only, no children allowed space, I guess. But again, it's like how locks only keep out honest people. That's another little phrase. People are gonna, if they want to break in, maybe someone who's not super motivated will try the door, and if it's locked, then they won't get in. Sometimes people will check all the doors in a parking lot to see if one of the cars they can get into it. But if someone really is motivated, they will get into it. If someone's really motivated, they will find someone to victimize. Stranger danger is not that common. We don't really do this when it comes to sexual assault. It's mostly people so the stranger danger thing, not really applicable either. And so here's the thing that I want your audience to take from this. When we're talking about bathroom access, why is this important? Why is this a right that is up for discussion? Why do we care what bathroom we're made to use? Okay, so it's dangerous for me as an androgynous person. Let's take a quick guess. What do you think I was assigned at birth? Random people out there who don't know anything about me. I use it's pronouns. A lot of people can't tell. A lot of people can tell, and that's fine. So I am gender ambiguous, which means that a law actually has passed in Kansas where I live that's going into effect on July 1st, unless the ACLU challenges it, that will make it to where I'm required to use the bathroom that I was assigned, of the associated assigned sex at birth that I was given. So realistically, the thing is that the women's bathroom is the space that is going to be policed more. So even if I have been assigned female at birth, I can't realistically use the female restroom because that's the space where there's going to be additional scrutiny.
It's also...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's also weird to so there's the common refrain of do you want people with X genitalia going into these spaces? And then you just kind of sit there and go well, one, have you heard of bottom surgery?
Yeah, right, true.
The whatever genitalia is down, that's plastic. That can be changed. That is malleable. We can make that whatever the fuck they want. And then so I have a good friend of mine who is intersex, and where the fuck do they go?
There are, in a couple of these laws, in the one in Florida in particular, the bathroom bill in Florida, they basically said intersex people will be treated on a case-by-case basis as per the Americans with Disabilities Act.
How the fuck are they going to know that they're intersex when they're walking into the bathroom? Just somebody sitting there with a little laser gun, beep, yup, you got Klinefelters. Okay, next.
Yeah.
What the fuck are they doing?
Are we checking IDs on the way into the bathroom? Because that's not something you do in a society that's not authoritarian. It's a pretty authoritarian thing to do, is requiring people to just give you their documentation whenever. So the thing is that regardless of the legality of these things, even if okay, I'm assigned female, so I need to go to the assigned female bathroom. Well, I'm visibly androgynous and my voice sounds the way that it does. So I'm in danger physically by people who are trying to be like the cops of the community. You know, people seem so eager to assist and become a citizen cop.
There's going to be that one Karen in the bathroom who's just like, they bought a can of mace for this one reason, and they're just sitting there like, I'm ready to use it. I'm ready. You're just like, why do you want to have to roll that die?
Yeah, so if you think about the access to bathrooms thing, if I feel like I can't go to the women's bathroom because like even if I think that I belong there, or even if the law thinks that I belong there, that's going to be the place that is least safe for me to go. Like, well, maybe the men's bathroom is not the gender affirming option for me, or maybe I'm concerned about a big burly trucker who just walked in there, and I don't know that he won't try to like corrective rape me or assault me when I go in to use the restroom. So the thing that creates for trans people is a situation where we cannot go to the restroom in public without risking serious violence on our person, which means that we functionally can't exist in any public space for longer than a couple of hours. Because think about it, like you need to pee every few hours, or you have to really hold it, or you have to restrict yourself from drinking water. So trans people actually have a higher than average occurrence of urinary tract infections and bladder infections because of our needing to hold our pee because of this unsafe situation. In many places, you know, we've been doing this for decades, whether, you know, like I said, there wasn't ever any legal question about whether we should use this restroom or that restroom until 2016, when Gavin Grimm was restricted from using the restroom in his school and successfully won that case in the state Supreme Court there in North Carolina. So we've been asking these questions for my entire life of like, whether or not it's illegal, is it safe? So ask yourself, like, yeah, if you have the legal right to use the restroom, but you don't have like a social ability to do it, do you actually have the right to do it? Like what rights do you meaningfully have if the citizenry is acting as an extrajudicial, like extra legal force on your life and on your body? So I just want people to be aware that, yeah, we do need to have discussions about the laws changing. It is bad that the laws are becoming more restrictive, and, you know, it's not only the interpersonal danger in the bathrooms, but now you're also having to deal with the idea that you might be branded a sex criminal on children. And then in Florida, they also are trying to make it so that you don't need a unanimous jury vote to be convicted of a death penalty, like having the death penalty applied to you in cases of rape and pedophilia. So it's a hop, skip, and a jump. It's not a slippery slope if that's the clear targeted path that they're on.
Not to mention, if all the legislation has already been introduced, which it all has.
They're trying.
It's only a slippery slope if that end point is not already clear. Because the slippery slope fallacy is me going like, hey, if we allow gay marriage, then what stops somebody from screwing an animal? That's a slippery slope fallacy, because at what point are we going to legalize the other one? Nobody's introducing that. That's not in any pipeline. There's no clear-cut way to get to that.
Yeah.
But all of the I believe the I did a video on the death penalty one in Florida. That stuff is already happening. We're already there.
Yeah, this is not hypothetical. This is not a thought exercise. This is like, here's the connection they're drawing. They keep saying trans people are trying to groom children. Trans people, you know, we want to turn kids into our sexual toys, or whatever the hell crazy shit that they say. And then they say, oh, well, if you go into the bathroom and a child is there at the same time, that's a sex crime on a child. And then also we're going to try to make it so that if you commit a sex crime on a child, that is punishable by death. And, you know, in Arkansas, one of the Democratic senators in Arkansas put it so well, you know, they're trying to make using the bathroom at the same time as someone else is physically in the same area as you, like the equivalent to doing things like physically penetrating a child. You know, those are considered particularly heinous crimes. And now we're putting even a case where like you are already in the bathroom, you're sitting there, you're taking a dump, it's taken you a while, and a 6-year-old comes into the bathroom to wash their hands and then leaves. That is a sex crime on a child, according to the way that some of these laws have been written. So yeah, there's a very clear they want us to all die kind of direction that this is heading in. There are less serious kind of questions to ask about trans rights as well. You know, like trans rights to healthcare. That's an entire topic that
Tennessee just made it a whole lot harder to get HRT for everyone. And I believe I was talking with Brianna Wu about this a few days ago, about how as we've been culturally stuck in the trans sports debate for the past 4 fucking years, the legislation that has been passing has been restricting HRT.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of those weird things where, like, do we need to talk about trans sports? Absolutely. Is that a thing that is important? Absolutely. However, while this has been the thing that people have been focusing on online a lot, we've hit this wall of, oh, by the way, conservatives keep slipping in, not full-on, flat-out bans of HRT, but the plan for the last few years, as per things that Chris Rufo has been trying to push through in his little influence network, if you've looked up all of his crap, has been the erosion of easy access to things like HRT. This is one of the reasons why, like, DIY HRT conversations have become infinitely more common lately, because, well, welcome to America. We've been self-medicating for a lot of stuff because none of us can afford healthcare in the first place. Yeah. Why not here?
Yeah, and I want to clarify for people that DIY hormones, it doesn't mean you're cooking it up in the bathroom toilet. Like,
Luxanders,
it doesn't mean
to cook.
Yeah, we're doing it. It's not Breaking Bad. No, it just means like you purchase your medication online through like a pharmacy in another country. Like I recently bought some nitric oxide nasal spray from Israel because they have like a nasal spray that I wanted and it's not approved here. So that's what DIY means. It means learning what your dosage ought to be based on general endocrinology knowledge, and hopefully you can find a local Quest Diagnostics center which will test your estrogen and your testosterone and whatever else you need to be keeping an eye on. It means that you're paying out of pocket for all this stuff. It means that you are not doing it under the guidance of a doctor. But hey, a lot of these doctors don't know how the hell to treat us anyway. Plenty of us go in with more knowledge than our doctors and have to educate them and try to convince them to give us the appropriate amount of care.
I've had a friend who had an issue where they were on T and the doctor was basically giving them microdosage. So for a good, I think it was like a good 6 or 7 months, their body experienced practically no change.
Yeah.
Like, there was no increase in facial hair. There was no change in any way, shape, or form. There was nothing. And it was entirely because the doctor was giving the lowest medical amount that they could, as opposed to giving the amount that would get them to what we consider normal levels for a cis male.
Yeah.
And you know, it's only recently that they've actually been having the correct amount of T, and so they've started growing less patchy facial hair. They've started taking on more masculine traits as they've been trying to do the whole damn time. And I just like when you mentioned the DIY thing, there are people in Texas who, because of their proximity to the Mexican border, instead of going to the doctor, which is really expensive, especially in Texas, they'll just go across the border and get amoxicillin, because that's considered an over-the-counter drug you can get without a prescription in Mexico. So when they need an antibiotic, they'll just go there, get amoxicillin, come back, and it's cheaper than going to the doctor's office.
It's called medical tourism. It's very common for Americans to go to Mexico for dental care, as another big example. So yeah, we're talking about medication that is being restricted, like the doctors explicitly underdosing people because they disagree with their care, but they feel that they can't deny the care they can't deny outright without being sued. It's very common for trans girls to be stuck on 2 milligram pills of estrogen for a year or two. And then they go on Reddit and find out, like, yeah, girl, you should be on injections, and that's like a criminally low dose. So again, it's a situation where like you technically have the legal right to access it, and you have for like my entire life. And there's different hoops that you have to jump through to prove that you require the care. It used to be you needed to be in therapy for a certain amount of time. La da 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 da. We're kind of trending toward an informed consent model where it's more like, hey, as long as you've done your research and you can verbally confirm to me that you understand what this medicine is going to do to you, that gets me as the doctor out of legal liability and, okay, take the medicine that you clearly want. When I got first diagnosed and sought medical care for transition, the nurse practitioner genuinely was just like, yeah, every single person that I see who wants this care knows like every single thing that I'm about to say, but I'm legally required to go over it with you. Yeah, so not having access to that medical care, it prevents you from being able to integrate in society. It makes it harder for you to get a job. You know, the sports conversation, they complain so much about, ooh, going through male puberty makes you have a biological advantage, but they also want to deny kids access to puberty blockers, which will prevent them from developing that.
So a funny story. I was at the gym, and at the Planet Fitness that's here, they have a TV that plays every news station, and then a couple TVs that play like reruns of Friends, and then the Lifetime network. So I happened to be on the treadmill in front of the Fox News TV, and the Fox News TV, they were airing for the entire time I was at the gym a segment on trans people in sports, and then on the I can't remember what it's called, but on the bottom where they would flip up like little bits of information.
Lower third, yeah.
When they would flip that up, it would always be like study this, and it was always just the titles of studies, and it would be things like puberty blockers found to be the same medicine as used for castration, and it would be just like constantly stuff like that. It's like, so when you just flip that up, if I just read those titles, I'd go, oh, that's insane. Why would we give Luprin to children? And then when you realize, oh shit, right, the way poison works for all people who exist is dosage. Water can kill you if you have too much water.
Truly.
As soon as you take that into account, you're like, oh, hold on a minute. Hold on. Can I read the study? No, they're just going to bitch about trans people in sports. There's like, it was a very weird thing that there was that juxtaposition of bitching about trans people in sports on the upper, and then on the lower, a study saying, oh, but we can't have the puberty blockers that solve the problem. Funny thing, do you remember Chris Shelton?
I do not by name at least.
So ex-Scientologist, used to do a lot of work with a lot of people in the atheist skeptic community, and then BLM happened, and then he got, we'll just go ahead and say mouthy. There's a more ironic term I could use here. I could just say you got uppity. But so, fun thing, he's blocked me twice. The first time he blocked me was over conversations about defund the police. The second time he blocked me, which was more recently, this time I got screen caps, because this time I was like, okay, I talked about the Fox News thing at the gym on Twitter, and then he responded with, hey, puberty blockers don't begin to solve the disparities in trans people in sports. The problem is trans bodies, like there's some kind of superpower at play, or something. And
it's
then
supernatural somehow.
And then I just went, would you like to unpack that? That's all I said. Would you like to unpack that? And then he goes on a tirade about how he's not gonna unpack that. He would just be called a transphobe, and he's definitely not a transphobe. And I'm like, I don't give a shit if you're a transphobe. I don't give a flying fuck. I give a flying fuck if you hurt people. What's in your heart of hearts? Not my concern. I don't give two shits. So I just said, okay, then maybe next time. Vice Rhino sent me a wonderful 83-page long meta-analysis on trans people in sports that showed that, hey, by the way, if puberty blockers are involved, none of the gains that are had in male puberty are things that happen anymore. Like, that's what the puberty blockers stop. So I grabbed that link, put it in my reply, and went, then maybe don't talk about this, especially when you're wrong. And then he just goes, I will talk about whatever I want on my own damn page, thank you, and blocks me. And I'm just like, okay, I didn't realize I was
snowflakes.
I didn't realize I was arguing with an 11-year-old.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I see some people refer to puberty blockers. People will go like, that's like medicine that they gave people for cancer. Like,
Yeah.
if you have
early
ovarian
onset
cancer,
breast cancer.
yeah, you take hormone blockers because that's the whole thing. So
That's what it was designed for.
One thing that people may not realize with puberty blockers and stuff is like, again, like, here's the thing. Do you have a right to a job? That's a whole conversation. Like, do you have the right to a job in this country? That's what the protections are when they're saying you're not allowed to fire someone for being gay or trans or black or Jewish. Like, you're not allowed to discriminate against people in the workplace on these things because we're kind of trying to protect sort of the right to earn a living. Everybody needs to earn money or they'll kind of just die. So if you as a trans person don't pass, for example, you might have a difficult time getting a job working at the front desk at a place because maybe the company doesn't want someone who's visibly trans. Like, if you are pre-everything, like, especially if you're a trans feminine person, that's where the scare tactics all come in. If you're tall and you've got 5 o'clock shadow and you're trying to put on makeup and you don't really know how to do it yet and you're wearing an ill-fitting dress because you're not on hormones yet, like, you go through male puberty and you look like that because you didn't have access to the medical care and now you can't get a job. Well, what are you going to do? Survival sex work. And then you're going to get arrested for survival sex work, and then you're going to be a convicted sex criminal, and then people will use that to say trans people are sex pests. And here we have like a vicious cycle that starts,
And then there's another aspect of that vicious cycle that gets really, really bad. And that is the fact that you mentioned the sex work thing, how very often you end up there. In the United States, I believe we're still at 37 states. I could be wrong on the exact number where trans panic is a defense that you can use in court if you were to harm somebody who does not have the genitalia you were expecting. Or, let's be honest, the courts just have to believe that that's what happened. There are people who can find somebody who is trans and they can go, oh, I'm going to be this beacon of justice for the Lord our God, and then end up causing a problem that way, and then going to court and go, I went on a date with what I thought was a cute girl, and then it turns out it was a guy, is what their defense is going to be. And again, in 37 states, it's literally called the trans panic defense. I think it was originally the gay panic defense, I believe.
There are two separate things, yeah.
So it's just like, it's really fucky, especially for somebody who might feel like they have to work escort services to survive. Especially like there's members of my community I know that like their goal is not to end up on either end of the extremes of the gender spectrum. Their goal is to purely androgynize. There are members of my community who were like, I've got big tits and a giant man beard. Like, that's just like, that is their goal, their ideal body, the thing that prevents them from feeling dysphoria or, opposite end makes them feel euphoria. What does that person do when society can only look at them as an enemy?
Yeah, like where do you go when public spaces are no longer accessible to you because you'll get harassed? What are you supposed to do if you can't get and keep a job? Then you don't have access to healthcare, you can't pay for things. Oh, yeah, here's another thing. Like, if you're not convinced that trans people deserve the right to just like live in society, there is an economic argument that we can make that if trans people can't get jobs, then they're more likely to be on food stamps or more likely to be on welfare, more likely to be seeking Section 8 housing vouchers.
Congratulations, your tax dollars pay for the trans people you hate.
Yeah,
if you want to be the spiteful motherfucker, then let them have jobs.
Yeah. And like, it costs us, tens of thousands of dollars sometimes to get corrective surgeries for things that happened to us during our quote unquote natural puberty. And that's money that doesn't get spent on small businesses. It's money that we don't get to spend on buying a house, on stimulating our local economies. That's money that's getting funneled into the pharmaceutical industry. So if you're upset about the pharmaceutical industry and you think, oh, they're creating lifelong patients, like, well, it's significantly worse if you don't let us have puberty blockers. And personally, if you're of the opinion, here's my opinion. If you are of the opinion that, every person, like basically if you think that trans kids shouldn't get puberty blockers because of like you're worried about the permanent effects, you think that they shouldn't go on cross-sex hormones because you're worried about the permanent effects, oh, they're too young to make this decision, then the logical end conclusion of that is that every single human being should be on hormone blockers until whatever age you've decided is the age of majority for that decision. But of course, they don't think that that's the thing that you should do. They want to force everybody to go through their natural puberty, quote unquote, because they think that that is going to naturalize and convert people out. Like if regret is the thing that you are worried about, then you should want puberty blockers to be available because of how much regret and money goes into correcting things that happen to trans people during the puberty that we did not want.
Well, and the argument that these things are natural, a lot of people seem to just, they make the connection that that means good.
Yes, that natural equals good.
Arsenic is natural.
Yes.
And it's not a good thing. And then when you say that, they go, well, that's different. No, it's not. It's not. If we can agree that arsenic is natural and it's not good, then we can agree that things that are natural do not necessarily mean they are good. Not to mention, if you go on your first puberty under HRT, that particular puberty is as natural as anything else. That's derived with hormones that we have, whether they've been synthesized or not. Your body is the one doing the work.
Yeah, truly.
So cooking meat is not natural, but we do it. True.
Depression is natural, but we treat it, you know?
Yeah, and, bigots are natural, and we, Twitch TOS.
TOS.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding there. But, so, we know that there's a risk, or we've already seen places make trans people lose the rights to go into the bathrooms that they want to, which limits the amount of time that they can be out in public spaces. And while obviously an answer to that would be to restructure the way all bathrooms are so that they all have individual stalls and nobody sees anybody, nobody's going to do that. That takes a lot more money than writing a single bill.
Yeah.
Like, infrastructure takes a lot more money than just writing a bill that lets you be an asshole. So people are going to just write the bill that lets them be an asshole. So there's that. There is the right to HRT, which has been getting more and more restricted as things go. What other rights are there? Oh, actually, no. Also, puberty blockers. Rights to puberty blockers are being restricted, which is not the same thing as HRT, despite some idiots in my comment section saying that, oh, we're putting kids on HRT at the age of 8. Like, no.
Yeah.
No.
For children, you're just cutting their hair the way that they want it cut. You're just changing the way that they dress, unless the kid is having precocious puberty, in which case, it is still acceptable. Every single one of these bills has an exception for you are allowed to mutilate the genitals and sterilize intersex children. And you are allowed to circumcise your little boys still. And it is still acceptable to use puberty blockers for the treatment of precocious puberty, which is why these laws are going to get shot down under the 14th Amendment, hopefully the Equal Protection Clause, because it's not okay for you to give this medicine to certain people for certain conditions, but to deny it for certain other conditions that have to do with issues of identity. So we can keep our fingers crossed on that. Those are a lot of the really obvious things. And there's other stuff like the right to change your documentation, like the law in Kansas that is supposed to be an anti-bathroom bill. Shockingly, it is written in such a broad way that it does include a paragraph toward the end about, like, for purposes of collecting information for public health data, you must be recorded under your assigned sex at birth, which basically, the legal interpretation of that could be stretched so far as to deny us the opportunity to change our gender markers on our driver's licenses, and potentially to prevent us changing our names. Kind of depends on who you ask. But like the fact that cis people have the ability to change their names, when they get married or if they just feel like it, and they are not put at risk in the same way for, if some places have a requirement that you need to post your name in the newspaper, post your name change in the newspaper, very publicly dead naming yourself. And when if cis people have to go through that same process, which they don't always, that is also an increased burden on trans people that cis people don't experience. But there are places that do try to make it illegal for us to have documentation that is consistent with our gender. There are places in this country that require you to sterilize yourself. You must have a sterilizing procedure specifically in order to change your identity documentation, which is hella genocidal.
So a couple things that are funny about that. One, Finland used to have the same law, and very recently, like within the last year, finally changed that law on forced sterilization. One of my VTuber model artists, actually, Suzu, lives in Finland and had been keeping track of that law for a while because of how this stuff affects people in their family. On top of that, it's really awkward to hear on one end being trans sterilizes you, quote, quote, and then on the other end, you must go through a separate sterilization process in order to do X and Y legal thing. Well, hold on a minute. Hold on. I thought that the puberty blockers or the HRT or the surgery or the go on and on and on, I thought these things were supposed to sterilize you. Turns out, all it does is it makes you less fertile. Which you know what else makes you less fertile? I'm a guy. You know what can make me less fertile? Tidy whities.
Microplastics.
Fucking tidy white. Well, no, it's so because the temperature for the testicles.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I was waiting to make the microplastics joke.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, I also grew up in Florida, so I've got microplastics are a part of my diet because the fish. For the people in my audience, look up what tidy whities do to fertility. It's actually kind of funny.
Yeah,
it's
just
very
because the
funny.
body temperature.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a reason they can descend and raise back up. They're regulating their own temperature.
Yep. It's just one of those things that, like, when you find it out, you're like, that's weird, that's strange. But
yeah,
it was like, okay, cool. Then should we illegalize wearing tidy whities? They have an effect on fertility. Obviously, it's a scourge that needs to be purged from the United States. Otherwise, all the white people are going to get great replaced or something.
Yeah. So much weird breeding nonsense there. Yeah, I want to say before we get too far off the, like, trans kids deserve the right to transition thing, I just want to say, like, kids make their own decisions about their own healthcare all the time. You absolutely are allowed to get a tattoo at age 16 if your parent signs off on it. So the whole point of medical healthcare being set up the way that it is because a multidisciplinary team of medical professionals work in collaboration with the parents and the child to determine the most effective form of treatment. That statistic that you keep seeing that says 80% of trans kids, quote unquote, end up desisting, that's like 80% of all of the kids who come in to be screened at all. 80% of them don't end up going on any form of treatment because the process is working as intended. And that 20% that does end up starting puberty blockers, and they almost 100% of those go on to take cross-sex hormones, that doesn't mean that puberty blockers are a slippery slope to hormone blockers or to hormone treatment. It means that the system of discriminating between actually gender dysphoric or actually gender incongruent children versus cisgender, gender nonconforming children, that process is working as intended. Children have a say in like whether they become ballerinas, which permanently screws up your ankles. Children are fully capable of understanding the consequences of their actions. And, you know, if you are so concerned about children's fertility, like, first of all, I have to ask what the hell is wrong with you? And second of all, you know, why don't you just make it part of the treatment course that they get to have? They get like a state-sponsored having their eggs and sperm frozen for the next 10 years. Like, if that's your concern.
That's one of the things. So when I did a conversation recently with Nominal Naomi.
She's great. I love her.
When the Matt Walsh harassment campaign happened, it began as me going like, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need anything?"
Mm-hmm.
And then it moved into, actually, maybe we should talk about this on stream because actually the thing that's needed is information getting out there. That's the important part here. But it ironically, when I tuned into her stream the day of, before we went live, she was having the conversation about if people are so concerned about fertility, freeze your sperm, freeze your eggs. If that is the thing you are so concerned about, if that is your focus, there is a medical intervention we can do, which cis people have all the time, We can do it. If you are so concerned about having a biological child, okay, cool. They can have back problems like you, and we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, the right to documentation is kind of the next thing that I was leading into, since the bathroom bill kind of connects with that in my mind. You know, again, the extra legal discrimination, like outside of the legal process, if you completely pass, if you're a trans woman and you're gorgeous, you know, you're Natalie Wynn, you're Abigail Thorne, you are like a drop dead gorgeous, completely passing, that Kelly Cadigan lately, who we've been seeing on Twitter so much lately. Like, let's say
She's
fully
had a
pass.
weird arc.
Listen, yeah, I'm gonna reach out to her on TikTok and see if she'll talk to me. But you could be completely passing, and then if you have to give someone your ID for you're getting a job or you're applying for housing, and then you get outed by your documentation because, let's say, you can't afford the surgery to have yourself sterilized, and you can't change your birth certificate in the state that you were born because the state that you were born has that particular law. Any number of reasons. Maybe if you're in Kansas and if it's true that it's going to be interpreted this way in the actual practicalities, if you literally can't legally change your documentation at all, being outed, even if you do successfully pass, is a threat to your livelihood as well. That with the job thing and the housing, like, what are you going to do if you're homeless? Survival sex work, I guess. Again, you're right back to that. We've already discussed this. I hate Samantha Lux for being so pretty. Samantha Lux is ridiculously gorgeous. It's insane. Man, HRT is magic.
It's kind of funny. My girlfriend, who got introduced to her recently, Saki. I did not know that Saki was trans for the first year and a half we knew each other.
Oh wow, nice.
It just was never a thing that I knew, despite the fact that she actually has it listed in her Discord profile. Like when you click it, it says that. Mm-hmm. But it was never a thing that I knew, because it was not a thing that I looked for. And then that happened, and I went, oh, huh, neat. This is my Bon Bon, one of my artists, just goes, girlfriend Bon Bon, we have things to talk about.
Yeah.
She'll be here in 4 days, Bon Bon. I can give you details later.
Nice. That's very exciting.
I am happy about it. It said, stop in the chat too. Same thing. And a lot of people just did not know, because between HRT and vocal training and a lot of other things, you can get to a point where nobody can tell. We can always tell crowd, I'm sorry, they're made of fucking bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The right to an education is one that someone brought up in my chat earlier. You have the right to an education in this country. What do you do if you are not allowed to use the bathroom at school? Or what do you do if there is bullying happening at school and the administrators quietly agree that you shouldn't be allowed to be trans and that bullying you is the correct way to make you desist? And so they let the bullying happen. I mean, they don't even have to be ideologically motivated, because bullying is allowed to run rampant in this country every day anyway.
Yeah, they just go oh, well, that's a natural part of growing up. I dealt with it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it okay.
Yeah. So, do you have the right to an education if you're trans and you get boxed out of having an education? I had a conversation with Heem sometime late last year, I believe, about there was a trans teenager. I can't remember her name at this point, but it was all over Twitter for a second that this trans teenager was swatted or something along the lines, while she was actively Twitch streaming, or the cops came to her house because she wasn't in school, but she was refusing to go to school because they weren't providing her with provisions to use the bathroom. And this was in South Carolina or something along those lines. Just, the deep South, as you do. And the question is, is the district required to come up with some solution for her? Are they required to make the bathrooms accessible? Or should they be required to provide her with a quality alternative for education at home? If the state is making this law, but the individual school still is trying to serve the purpose of educating the students, has her success in life not been stymied? If she needs to quit school and go get a GED, that's a permanent reduction in overall lifetime wages if you have a GED instead of a high school diploma. So it's just you think Yeah, of course, everyone has the legal right to an education. Of course. In fact, if you don't go to school, they'll call the truancy police on you. But again, how can you be in a space where there is harassment or where you're not allowed to use the restroom? Like, realistically, the trans existence in this country is getting smaller and smaller. Oh, we have a First Amendment right to assembly, but I won't go to a gay club because I don't want to die. Like, am I really free? If I'm unwilling to put a rainbow sticker on my car, I would love to, but I won't because I don't want to get hate crimed. So am I really free? I'm not free to express myself.
Yeah, this is one of the things that, like, this is one of the reasons why I point out when I've got, like, the straight royal flush of privileges and also living in the American South.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons why, like, there's a lot of perspective on this that I know from friends and family and stuff like that. And then there's other stuff where I'm just like, I need to reach out to someone else, because these are not experiences that I have. These are not experiences that I deal with. The most I have to deal with is being an atheist in the Georgia South. But here's the thing, that is it's very invisible for me. Like, if I'm walking around, nobody can clock me as a godless heathen.
You got to wear that scarlet A on your shirt or your hat or whatever.
I have to wear that. Okay, but if I have it on a red hat and the A is white, then maybe maybe somebody will look at me and go, "Ah, it's a fellow." Wait, double take. That's not a Trump hat.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, and no one can clock you as poly. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody can clock me as polyamorous either. The only time there's a very public place that I go to whenever content creators are here in Georgia and we're like trying to find a place to go at 3 in the morning because none of us have functional sleep schedules. It's a place called Marietta Diner. It's a 24-hour chrome diner that is like really ritzy on the inside. And they have the best fried mac and cheese of all time. But about the only time maybe somebody could have clocked me as poly is years ago. I had 2 of my girlfriends, and I would bring them to Marietta Diner with me before one of them would go off to go to their boyfriend's house, and then we would, me and the other girlfriend would go back to my house. Like, that was just like a thing that we would do as a habit. Maybe that was the only time somebody could have clocked me as poly, but outside of that, if I just go to the card shop with one partner and then go to the card shop with a different partner the next day, somebody might just think I'm cheating.
Yeah, right. No one's gonna ask too many questions.
Yeah, there was a time when I had 3 partners with me, and I was just like, look, I want to go to the card shop, but I don't want to go to the card shop with one of you. I'd like to go with all of you, because if I don't go with all of you, I've got a lot of awkward questions to answer.
It's so much easier if you can all just everybody sound off. Who are you and what's your role in this polycule?
Mine is the cook. Anyway.
Yeah. It's a good role to have. Listen.
And then the next person goes, "I'm the bard." They're the one that has to get the most STI screenings.
Oh no. Fair enough. That's the relationship anarchist in the group.
They're the one that we have exceptions for.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Jesus. But I don't know. I currently only have one partner, so none of those complications are currently things I have to deal with. Jassa says, "What would a poly paladin do?" The poly paladin is the kitchen table poly person. They're the person that goes, "Let us sit down and discuss the rules."
Yeah, they've got the spreadsheets.
Now we will read on page 225 of Ethical Slut. I don't actually think that book has 225 pages in it, but
I mean, it depends on how big the print is. You can make any book however long you want it to be.
I listen to it in audiobook form. I have no fucking clue.
Exactly. Oh my god. I love audiobooks. They're so great.
I'm in the middle of the Dresden Files in audiobook form, and they're wonderful.
Nice. Yeah.
You said, "Why must you call me out like this?" Fennec, I'm not just calling you out. I'm calling a lot of people in my community out.
You gotta have a slightly antagonistic relationship with the community. It can't be all fun and games.
I say random stuff on stream and they make porn of me when I'm asleep, and it's weird. And I've given up trying to stop it a long time ago.
I haven't had that happen to me, but I also don't have a VTuber with giant titties like thing going on.
Hey,
so.
to be fair, this was also birthed from fan art.
Okay.
when I had the old little Hobbit shaman model, people kept gender bending me, so I took the gender bent fan art and submitted that to a VTuber model maker, and said, "Can you make this off of the fan art?" This is my community's fault. This is their making, not mine.
Yeah, people don't get it. It's a collaborative effort between you and your community. We create horrors together.
Bonbon said I added a whole dimension. True, because Bonbon was my 3D model artist.
Mm-hmm.
that was back when I said, okay, I'm not doing this as a 2-month joke anymore. I guess I'm just doing this.
There you go.
Screw
but
it.
I mean, it's working for you, so.
That you would be surprised how many VTubers are very, very politically involved, but will not talk about it on their streams. The anonymity is so useful.
Mm-hmm. I'm out here with my actual human face.
My human face comes on when I press this one button on my stream deck. This one. Oh, wait, no, that's the wrong one. This one. Oh, never mind. I have things layered improperly. Never mind. My actual face button isn't working right now, and I'm far too lazy to fix it at the moment.
Yeah, no face. No face for you today.
So identification is where we left off on there. Does that bleed into any other rights that are currently at risk right now, or is there just another area that has to be springboarded off of entirely from there?
Oh gosh, I mean,
because education was the last tangent that we had from that.
Yeah, a lot of it is little things like that. Like considering that we've covered some of the major ones. I mean, your right to travel can be infringed if your identification doesn't match how you look. Some of these states are trying to pass laws that will make it illegal for you to seek the gender-affirming healthcare in an adjacent state. So if you live, I'm just throwing out examples because I cannot remember which of these states are introducing which horrendous laws.
Let's just use Florida.
Yeah, let's just use Florida. Let's just say that Florida has made it illegal for you to cross the state lines into Georgia to get access to medical care. You know, you're thinking, oh, it's illegal in Florida. That's fine. I'll just go to Georgia. Or if you take your kid with you, there's this whole other messed up thing. There's a law about against sex trafficking children across state lines.
And they've been using it to apply to a parent who just takes a gender nonconforming child to a different state.
Yeah.
Yep,
so
I saw that.
It's horrendous. It's so messed up. It's part of the Commerce Clause, I think. That has to do with you're not allowed to traffic certain things across state lines, and human beings are just one of them. So there's so many little things that basically I hope that you're getting the picture at this point, that your audience is getting the picture that there's so many things that you can't do. Even going to the grocery store can be difficult as a trans person. If the person who's checking out decides, oh, you're using a debit card, I need to see your ID. And if you have one of those credit card companies that will let you put your preferred name on your credit card, but your ID still says what it originally said because you, again, can't get your ID updated. How many different situations is that going to affect you? If your picture doesn't match, are you going to be allowed to purchase alcohol? Which, again, that's not the biggest, most important right to have access to, but it is death by 1,000 cuts, inability to be in society. If you can't change your gender marker, this is a big problem for people in the UK. If you can't change your gender marker, then are you going to have to get married as the gender that you aren't? Is your death certificate going to misgender you posthumously? What can you imagine how many times you have to show someone your ID? And if every single time you did that, you were worried that the person was going to call the police on you or refuse to give your ID back because they claim that it's fraudulent. If they just say that it's a fake ID, they can keep it. And now you're having a police interaction.
We've had stuff like that back when I did alcohol sales in Georgia. That was the thing we could do. We could look at an ID and go, oh, this feels fake. You know, it's at your discretion what to do at that point. And again, I live in the South. There is of all of the places here, there is only one space I can think of off the top of my head that is actually like a decent trans positive space that sells alcohol, and it's a card shop. Because there's a card shop cafe hybrid that I don't want to name here that they sell alcohol and they sell pride pins.
Yeah.
So
that's like their whole shtick.
It is one of their shticks. There's a friend of mine who is trans who works there, and they were debating on, you know, where they wanted to work. They knew they wanted to work at a card shop because very neurodivergent. That's their hyperfixation. It's the one thing they know they'd be able, or special interest rather. It's the one thing they know they'd be able to focus on and also keep as a career. So we were just like, if you're going to go to any card shop, go to that one. That's the one that's not going to discriminate on you, 2 years down the line. Go to that one.
Yeah. Oh, related to the medical stuff, I don't know if I mentioned this. I was talking about it before we started our call. You might have the legal right to access medical care, and you might have a doctor who gave you the medical care, and your insurance can cockblock you, and so can any individual pharmacist who doesn't like you. Just kind of creating a lot of bureaucratic slowdowns. If any people in your audience are familiar with, like, Philosophy Tube did a big hour-long video about
all the blocks, I remember.
Yeah, in the UK, and like the inability to access care. Like the first time she tried to get a referral to a gender identity clinic, her doctor just conveniently did not send the referral for 6 months. And this happens to plenty of people when they're just trying to fill, like, don't go to CVS if you're trans is basically one of the universally understood things across this country. CVS will try to screw you over. Walgreens does it too sometimes, where just individual pharmacy techs. Someone in my chat was saying that they had to wait 6 weeks to get their testosterone refilled, and 4 of those weeks they could see the filled prescription in a bag behind the counter, like just waiting for them to pick it up. Another thing is access to crisis services like rape centers and homeless shelters. Part of the law that passed in Kansas is that, you have to use the services correlating with your sex assigned at birth, and that explicitly includes prisons, rape crisis centers, domestic violence centers. And if you're at all familiar with this process, like, there aren't any rape crisis centers for men. A lot of them are women only. So if you're a transgender woman and you've experienced a rape in the same way that women do, except that actually trans women are slightly more likely to be raped in, like, lifetime statistics. For cis women, it's about 1 in 5. And for trans women, it's closer to 1/3 have like a lifetime experience of sexual assault. So, where are you supposed to go? What are you supposed to do? If you show up there and you get treated like you're a man who's trying to invade that space, then you are having a very particular kind of trauma added on top of the fact that you've just been raped. Or trying to access homeless shelter. This is why I don't shop at Salvation Army, because there was one particular case where a trans woman tried to just get a bed to sleep in for the night. They would not house her with the women. And I don't know if it's that I'm sure that she did not want to be housed with the men because of the risk of assault and rape on her body. And she froze to death on the sidewalk instead. Like, she just died and is dead now because it's legally allowed to deny you that care and deny you a place to live. And when you think of that healthcare stuff, keep in mind that places like Florida are trying to pass religious exemptions to say you don't need to provide a trans person with medical care if you disagree with their lifestyle. People have died because of this. Ambulances show up to car accidents and they realize that someone's trans and they start, like, making fun of them while they bleed out on the street. And that's just, again, you're supposed to have the right to life and liberty in the pursuit of happiness. Do you have a right to life if legally there is no protection? Or, like, what are you going to do if they just let you die? It's not like you can sue afterwards because you're just dead. And there aren't ramifications for those people. I personally think that I don't really know how I feel about states and governments and stuff at this point, but if we're going to have one, then if you let someone die because of your transphobia, like, I don't know that I don't think you deserve the, like, most horrendous version of the death penalty that we have legally available to us, frankly. Because that just makes it impossible in any situation. I have to be way more careful than other people do about not breaking my arm. Because breaking my arm could be a situation where I go to a hospital and they make it worse. Like, don't ever take me to a Catholic hospital. I don't know if I've talked to my husband about this, but I need to tell him, like, by the way, if there's ever an emergency, do not take me to a Catholic hospital because they will just let me die. Like, the number of things you have to think about is crazy.
No, and it's there's been a lot of talk of, like, for instance, with the LGBT Alliance, where they go like, oh, well, let's, try to take trans people out of this particular movement. Or like let's have LGB, but with none of the T's and Q's. I'm like, well, hold on. Are you telling me that a lot of those people who are gay or lesbian have not used the word queer to describe themselves? At least once or twice? But
we're queer, get used to it.
But you see a lot of that and you go, well, hold on a minute. A lot of times being gay can go under the radar. Being lesbian can go under the radar. If you're not, walking out holding hands with the partner you've chosen, then you might be able to go under the radar pretty well. Not every gay man has a Hollywood lisp, as it were. But a lot of times being trans, just that can't go under the radar as much. If you're, a few months into HRT and you've got a dress on and you're, assigned male at birth, then there are going to be people who are going to stare at you. And especially if you live like where I live, if you're not in Atlanta, there are going to be some uncomfortable scenarios you have to deal with. So
do you have the right to travel if you can't leave the city that you live in because going 1 hour outside of your city means that you're in Hickville?
And that's...
down.
You hear the banjos. That means everything's relative.
Yeah. Oh, God.
I'm close enough to Alabama to make that joke. It's fine.
Yeah, you're allowed.
But no, like, you go to Atlanta, everything's fine. You go, like, where I live, which I'm not going to say for doxing reasons, but
sure.
Again, I live in Georgia's District 14. We elected Marjorie by a landslide.
Oh, no, that's harsh.
Mm-hmm. She had 83,000 votes, and Marcus Flowers had like 14,000 votes. And Marcus Flowers could have been clocked as a Republican while running on the Democrat ticket.
Of course.
Our Democrats got rid of Brittany Tenenbaum because she did cosplay and burlesque.
Great.
That is the type of people even our Democrats are here.
The misogyny is so strong. Like, all of the different axes by which society can be regressive, it feels like we're experiencing a huge conservative backlash right now on all of these things where, like, racism is more rampant, anti-Semitism is more rampant, and, like, anti-female sentiment is more rampant. Like, and I'm trans, and, like, this is also not to say anything about disability, the normalization of like, oh, it's fine. COVID only kills disabled people, so it's no big deal. Meanwhile, I'm just like, okay, guess I'll die. Like, okay, great. Like, let's not even talk about disabled rights on top of everything else.
Yeah, that's, as somebody who has a friend who recently became disabled and is now having to deal with stuff like, for instance, he got his leg shattered in an accident at work. And they put the iron rod in and everything. They said, here's your prognosis. You might be able to walk. Who knows? We'll see what we can do. He's not been able to do physical therapy because the system here in Georgia for doing physical therapy requires going to a licensed location that can do physical therapy for you. Here's the thing. The way in which his body was impacted means he cannot drive.
Oh,
And for him to get out of the house, he has to be physically lifted by 2 people.
Right.
He cannot go to a physical therapy location. That's not a thing. But we have a system in place that says that somehow he has to just not be disabled for the 10 minutes it takes. And then and then it's okay for him to be disabled again so that he can get things fixed up. America, everybody.
Yeah. And there is like the accessibility question as well that, the disability thing kind of leads into it. If you are not legally allowed to use the bathroom in the state of Florida, but your career involves going to a conference every year in Florida. Well, you can't go to that conference anymore. You are professionally stunted because it is not accessible. Now, the reason why I thought of that is because there is also the conversation to be had of if no place is enforcing masks, then if you are high risk or if you are normal risk, which is everybody has the risk of suddenly not being able to get out of bed anymore because of a nasty COVID infection or even an asymptomatic COVID infection, you know, your ability to live in society and have opportunities and meet people and have relationships, those are all going to be negatively impacted. So yeah, like, you know, being in public means having professional networking opportunities, having social opportunities, like getting to meet that one person who you're going to marry someday and have kids with. So for trans people, it's like, think of how far-reaching that means if you can't exist in public because someone might break your legs or someone might like key your car or someone might assault you in the restroom. How many opportunities are you going to be prevented from doing? Like, if you have a disability that gives you a GI problem and you need to use the restroom frequently, well then, you know, you can't guarantee that you can make a 20-minute trip to the grocery store without needing to use the restroom.
Never get diagnosed with Crohn's.
Yeah, true.
That's all you have to do. Just
that's my advice for you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or like, let's say you wanted to become let's say your biggest dream is becoming a content creator, and you want to be a public-facing figure. All it takes is one person getting your information, which, by the way, is a lot easier than you might think.
Yeah.
All it takes is one person getting your information, and suddenly, you being a well-known trans person is a life risk. Your career is now a risk to your own life. Like, not even to say, like, trans people who have gone into the military, because that is the one avenue that they have for getting medical care. During the Trump administration, that was taken away from them.
Yeah, the U.S. military is like the #1 employer of trans people, like, in the country. There's just like a pretty significant number of transgender people whose job happens to be in the military because they had like sort of guaranteed employment, like the ability to transition and maintain their employment because they couldn't be dishonorably discharged effectively. Mm-hmm. And you have to find an excuse for an honorable discharge. You know, like with many jobs, there are supposed to be legal protections, but realistically, you can be fired for any old reason. They can just make up an excuse unless you can really definitively point to the fact that they fired you for a specific protected trait.
Which
that's really hard to prove.
If you're in a state that has right to work, which makes it really hard to unionize, or if you're in a state that has what's called at-will employment, all it takes is an employer simply not liking you because of your religion, lack thereof, your sexuality, your gender. All they have to do is just make life difficult for you for a couple weeks. They can create the paper trail they need to get rid of you.
And you don't have to prove you can't prove that the landlord passed on your application to the house that you're trying to live in because of your trans identity. Like you're just screwed and you can't prove it.
And you're out $70 because you had to pay for an application fee.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one of my chatters also points out when you have intestinal issues as a trans person, you have to have a conversation about what states you can drive through. Like if I'm trying to get to Illinois to see some of my family members who live in Illinois, I have to check the law in Missouri, in Iowa, and like I have to know where the safe places are. And you might have to literally like reroute around certain states, or as one of my Texan viewers said earlier, if she were to leave Texas, she's gonna realistically have to fly out so that she doesn't have to drive through some areas of Texas that are not safe, and that costs a lot of extra money. Like the extra planning that goes into just not having basic access to facilities like restrooms is so far-reaching, and people think of it as frivolous. It's not about you feeling unaffirmed. This is the problem with Anna Kasparian and the whole, don't call me a birthing parent, okay? I'm a woman. It's like, you don't understand. It's not about your feelings about who gets access to this healthcare. Speaking about healthcare access, trans men, sometimes like one trans man in particular, Robert Eads, died in the 90s because he had ovarian cancer, and for a year or two he was denied care by more than a dozen doctors because they were like, well, if you're a man, then how could you have ovarian cancer? I guess this is a lesson for you, and also I don't want you in my waiting room because you'll freak out all my female folks. And then the cancer metastasized, and then he dies of something, a cancer that could have been treatable if it had been treated when it was, like, you know, having to go get a pap smear. And it's not just hoping that the people at the front desk don't call you the wrong name or don't misgender you. It's also about like, is this doctor, while I'm in the stirrups, going to ask me, okay, I'll disclose. I was assigned female at birth, and I have had more than one doctor ask me about the size of my clitoris while I am in the stirrups. And that just feels really fucking inappropriate to me. Yeah, well, it's their medical curiosity because they don't have boundaries. They think that my body is just something that is, for the purpose of satiating their medical curiosity. And they're like, they just want to know, is your clitoris bigger than it should be naturally because of testosterone therapy? And it's like, how do you say when you're in the stirrups, like, hey man, that seems really inappropriate. That's a sexual question and I'm in a compromised position. And also, maybe it's not even just the invasive questions. How do you know for sure that when they hurt you during the exam with the speculum, that wasn't deliberate, that wasn't them trying to teach you a lesson about how you're really a woman? Like, and that's like, female healthcare is so messed up anyway and so difficult. Like, I had an IUD placed and it was the worst thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life. And that was just par for the course female medical care. And like, I don't know if my care was worse because I'm trans and there was some bias involved there. I can't know. And I have to be, first of all, willing to confront my dysphoria to go into this space, deal with all of the hoops of people maybe misgendering me and everything.
Yeah.
It's deeply uncool.
I've seen similar things in the healthcare spaces here as well. My my ex, Raz, who still runs my Discord server, still does stuff for my community. But at one point in time, they had to have their ovaries removed because they were killing them. And I remember a solid year and a half of being in and out of emergency rooms because symptoms would systems would manifest. Blood pressure would go through the roof. The body would try to go into shutdown, and the doctors would just get them stable and then get them home. And then it is about the fifth time we were in the room again, we finally made the decision, okay, while we are together, I am just going to pay for your health care, because obviously if we don't have that, none of the doctors here are going to take this problem seriously. Eventually, the ovaries were able to be removed. We got that taken care of.
Good.
But it was the same thing of just like, they would constantly say like, oh, it's because you're overweight, or, oh, you just need to exercise more. And you're just sitting there going like, I know people who weigh 100 pounds with the exact same body weight more than this person and do not experience these symptoms. It is not the weight here that is the problem, sir. There is something inside that needs to be fucking cut out.
Yeah, the fat phobia is insane. It's truly crazy.
And like, that one I get angry about because it pissed me off, because I was literally dealing with a partner that I thought was going to die because of this issue.
Yeah, and people do die from straight up medical neglect. You're too young. You couldn't possibly have this issue, so we're not even going to test for it. Here's my gift to everybody out there. Make them write down that you asked for tests and they told you no. Ask them to add that to your medical documentation, because that's a paper trail for a lawsuit, and they will often just run the tests for you.
My fucking so in my community, there is an artist who's very well known, and she's been doing work for me on my channel for years. Turning Tide Studios recently had a stroke at like 34.
Yeah, welcome to post-COVID
just
world.
Like, and you see stuff like that happen, and like, whenever a doctor goes, you're too young to experience X, Y, and Z. No, bullshit. Shut the fuck up. Put that in. I agree. Put that in writing. Risk your medical career against the life of this person that means something to me.
Yeah.
Or shut the fuck up.
It's like, I have the money, just do the goddamn tests. Like, or we'll deal with the money part later. Like, it's not like it's gonna hurt you as a doctor to run the stupid test. Just figure it out.
I went to go get STD screening because, new relationship, new partner. I've been in the poly community long enough. Yes means test. Go get screened. And when I went, the very first thing to say, are you experiencing any symptoms? Are you sure you need to get tested? Yes, the fuck I do. Please, just do the thing.
Just should be routine.
Like, just do the thing, please. All I'm asking.
It's not like there's a limited number of resources. Like, oh, there's only so many pee sticks for you to pee on, or whatever. Like,
it's like, I've only got so much blood for you to draw. I guess my hand still hurts. I have deep veins, so they have to go through my hand.
Oh, that's rough. Ugh.
But
I hate intravenous crap. Like, I need to get my blood work done to test, because I've been on low dose T again for a couple months, and like, I just really, really, really hate blood work.
I'm not a fan of it either. I understand.
Yeah, that's rough.
So I guess that puts us. We've been here for about a good little more than an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Going over a lot of this. I guess my question would be, are there any final thoughts or final bits of info that you think people who are new to all of this in my community, and people who say that they don't know what trans rights are and yet somehow can't sit down and watch an hour and a half video in the background while they're driving,
right?
Anything else that might be useful for purposes of pointing people to this type of stuff?
I will say, I mean, y'all should look up the claims. I have videos on my channel if you are interested in looking. Like, if you think that something I said sounds crazy and you're like, there's no way that could possibly be the case, look it up. It's happening out there, and I'm drawing a very doomer picture because the situation is quite dire. And I think that makes it so that people don't really want to listen. It's like you're Cassandra, and people just don't want to hear you and your prophecies. We've been calling these actions genocidal for quite a long time. And the thing that I want to drive home for people is, if you think that some of these actions are hypocritical or they don't make sense, I invite you to start looking at the actions of these Republicans through the lens of the idea that their end goal is to, as Michael Knowles put it, to eradicate transgenderism from public life. The idea here is that a dead trans person is preferable to a living trans person, and like a repressed trans person is preferable to an out trans person. Just if you feel frustrated, if you feel crazy a little bit, if you feel like, why would you deny puberty blockers and also complain about the puberty effects in sports? It's because they want a world where transgender people do not exist. They want a world where they don't have to be around people they dislike.
I just pulled something up for my chat. The Human Rights Campaign Foundation actually has a wonderful resource in case you are unaware of how far-reaching a lot of this legislation is, which is the Gender Affirming Care Bans Impacting Youth page. And it shows every state that has a law or policy banning gender-affirming care up to the age of 18. Points out that in Alabama and Arkansas, court injunctions are ensuring continued access to care, but there's an asterisk there because that can change at any point. And then it has some state, a very few amount of states in yellow that have laws or policies banning gender-affirming care that is being considered. In half of the states in the United States, gender-affirming care up to 18, some laws have already passed. They've already gotten to that point. That is a wonderful resource I would point people to. The ACLU also has a page, after I get past the donation bit, that has it tracking all of the bills that have been passed, period. At now, we are at 491. We are at 491 bills that have been proposed.
Yeah, and something like 70 have passed so far this year.
Let us see. It has more information for all of that as you scroll down. It has the actual names of every single bill. So in case you are of the opinion that none of this is happening, or the fun phrase that could never happen here. If that is the thought you have in your head, those are two websites I would point people to.
I also sent you a link in the Discord chat. If you think that I'm being inflammatory by referring to these actions as genocidal, like, let me be clear. The purpose of genocide is to reduce the number of people in the group. It doesn't have to be total elimination. If you take kids away from their parents and remove all of their culture and language, as was done to the Native Americans, and you send them back to their families and their communities to be like assimilated into white culture, that is also a form of genocide. The Lemkin Institute, which studies genocide, was founded by the guy, or it was named after the guy who invented the concept of genocide. They released an article back in November describing the gender critical movement's genocidal nature, and gender critical, I think, always kind of evokes very particular flavor of UK transphobia, but they use the term gender critical to refer to, in large part, they're talking about the laws in the United States targeting transgender individuals. But let's also keep in mind, everybody, that this is not just an issue for the United States. If you live in the UK, you functionally don't have a right to transition, even though they have a nationalized healthcare system. That's one of the separate but equal, or like 14th Amendment protection, equal protection things that, you know, if you're a cisgender woman and you want to get a breast reduction because you have back pain, that's covered. But if you are a trans person who wants a breast reduction because you have gender dysphoria, you have to be put on a waiting list for 5+ years and go through a separate type of medical care with like psychological evaluations involved. And people commit suicide on the waiting lists for that. So I would say if you disagree with me, some of the experts on this subject agree with me, and I'm consulting with that information and following that information as well. Like, this is dead serious, and just think of how many little things you take for granted, like being able to get a prescription for Viagra, or for finasteride to prevent balding, or if you're a woman going through menopause, how easy it is for you to get an estrogen prescription. And imagine what it would be like if you couldn't go to your favorite bar because you were worried about someone shooting you and all of your friends, or if you could not go to the bathroom in any public location, what kind of restrictions that would put on your life. You know, if you're a Black person, you already know how terrifying it is to be around police. But if you're a person who normally doesn't get accosted by police, maybe imagine what it would be like if you were afraid of getting arrested and raped because you are like trans and they want to punish you, and they can just kind of do that and you don't have any power with the police. Or if you broke your arm and the ambulance person just decided to let you bleed. You know, it's horrifying, and it's really hard to think about. And I feel for that, the sense that like, I don't want to think about this. I want to shut my brain off. You've been telling me for over an hour all these doomer things. Yeah, welcome to life as a marginalized person in America. If you weren't aware, this is the horrifying daily life that we live, where we just can't go out in public. If we want to remain alive, we don't really get to live very much in the service of survival. So ask yourself, really, is that a condition you would accept for yourself? And if it's not a situation that you would accept for yourself, even if you don't know any trans people, like, do you think that any Americans should be living under this much scrutiny and fear? And if you don't think that that's the case, then you need to be motivated to action. I want you to feel like, okay, what the hell do I do? Let me find out what to do now that I understand what the problem is. Voting is a thing that you need to continue doing, even if it feels futile. Protesting is a thing that you need to do, even though they're criminalizing it. You need to be bothering your elected officials. The most important thing that you can do is spread the message. The most important thing you can do is tell more folks and get them on board. And then as a group, you can go, okay, well, we have all decided that Ron DeSantis is a plague on this country, and that if he becomes the president of the United States, that's going to be a big problem. So how can we mobilize and organize to prevent that from ever happening? Because it's going to be bad for you and your neighbors. How would you like to be arrested as a woman for wearing pants? Like, they're trending that direction. If you don't believe me, watch Steven Crowder. Like, they want no-fault divorce to be gone. They want women to be trapped in the home and forced to wear dresses, and men aren't allowed to wear nail polish. Like, it's so sweeping. and you should be pissed off every day of your life. And you should be motivated by that anger and motivated to do something to help protect the people around you, because it's not just about you. Maybe you will be safe, but do you really want to live in that society where there are no more Black people and there are no more gay people and every trans person who is born, isn't able to come out and be themselves, and then they just kind of quietly die? Yeah, is that the society you want to live in? If it's not, then you should do something. And I don't know what to tell you exactly. Like, it's up to you. It's up to us as communities to decide how to go forward. Some of the actions I would recommend are a little bit TOS. So I'm gonna stop there before it gets too crazy.
There's a lovely phrase I have been using more often than not.
Yeah.
And that is that one of the reasons that we police where people can protest is because protests make people uncomfortable. But there was a time where it was more normal to bring bricks to a protest. And bricks make protests really uncomfortable. But if you push people to the point where they have to bring enough bricks, some people start going quiet. I
haven't really heard much about Richard Spencer in a while.
I am wholly of the opinion that because the right values strength, or at least the facsimile of strength so much, him getting punched on camera had a huge impact on his ability to influence people, and it was very, very negative. Do with that information what you will, obviously, but yeah, no, a couple of things that I would suggest people to do. One, you might not realize this, but your House representatives, oftentimes the location of their offices is public knowledge. It is a good idea, because I did this when Marcus Flowers was going on his campaign against Marjorie Taylor Greene. It is a good idea to go to their offices, talk with their staff, try to get meetings with the actual representatives who are supposed to represent you. I don't give a shit if they are Republican, if they are Democrat, if they believe themselves to be some, alien third. I don't care. It is a good idea to go and tell your representatives the things that matter. Not in email, not in written form, not when they hand you one of those automated texts, ironically, right around election season. No, go there, talk with them, let them know the things that matter to you, because this amazing thing happens. Innuendo Studios did a video recently pointing out that one of the things that people who consider themselves moderates tend to do is they'll decry a protest and say that, well, if you put enough people in a protest, all you're doing is giving publicity to a problem or to the wrong people. When enough people show up to a protest, though, the other side starts to get scared. A protest of 400 people is an inconvenience. A protest of 4,000 people is a threat.
Yeah, that's why they cracked down on it so hard during the George Floyd uprisings. Police riots all across this country.
That's why we're dealing with Cop City in Atlanta right now.
Yeah, that's some crazy shit.
So I am an advocate for electoralism, but I am also an advocate for direct action. If you have a friend who is in need, who is in a minority space, do what you can to help them, even if it's as little as reaching out to them and being like, hey, things suck right now. Are you okay? If you have the ability to financially help people who need to get things like DIY HRT, do that. If you have the ability to go accost your representatives who are legally accountable to you, go make them accountable to you. Let them know the things you need. Let them know the things you give a shit about. Because I guarantee you the people that you don't like are already doing that.
I will say it's not super difficult as a cisgender man to get a prescription for a small amount of testosterone if you just go and say you're having trouble getting your dick hard. So, I mean, and who knows what you're gonna do with that prescription once it's in hand?
Who knows? Maybe your wife just tried something really interesting in the bedroom and that fixed it, and you just don't have a need for that anymore.
You just don't need it anymore, and now it's just lying around.
Yeah, it's just lying there. What are you gonna do with it? It's fine.
That's the thing about be gay, do crimes, be trans, do crimes. It's not a fun, cute little slogan. It means when our existence is criminalized, we will continue to exist, and it will be a crime to do it. But we're not going to stop just because they've made it illegal. So yeah, get big mad, and you should be willing to do messed up things that are against the rules, because that's the situation that we're in. Push comes to shove, the situation is dangerous, people are dying, and you should care about that. I don't, like, if I haven't convinced you in the last hour and a half, I don't know that there's literally anything else I could say that would convince people to do something.
Well, there is one thing they can do if they're not convinced that I would recommend them do.
Yeah.
If you're watching live, please hit the !collab command. That will take you over to Luxander's channel. If you are watching this on YouTube, then there will be a link in the title that will take you over to Luxander's YouTube channel, and then there will be a link to Luxander's website in the description of the video, so that you can go and learn more about this type of stuff. Because at the end of the day, I talk about this stuff a lot, but I can never talk about it from a point of personal experience. I can always talk about it through proxy. I can always talk about it through a lens of things that are happening legally. I can never give experience here because it's not going to be my experience. Luxander can.
Yep. If you wanna keep tabs on what's gonna be happening with the law in Kansas, where I'm not legally allowed to use the bathroom anymore, keep tabs on that. You know, I have a younger sibling who is trans, who is chosen to cut his prescription in half so that in case the access to medical care gets canceled, he'll have a little bit extra to get him tiding by. You know, how many times have you had to ration your medicine? You know, diabetics in this country, easy allies, diabetics and trans people, you know?
Absolutely. Well, Lex, I want to go ahead and thank you a lot for coming on and talking about all this stuff. It has been incredibly informative, incredibly helpful, and hopefully some members of my community who are not already familiar with you from previous exposures that have happened in cross areas of the atheist community years ago, hopefully they will go ahead and head over to your channel and get acquainted with you.
And of course, if any of my people don't know who Suris is, hit !guest. It'll take you there. Suris is a cool person who, I mean, I've been casually familiar with you for years, and you're one of like the least problematic people in the atheist space, I think.
There was a person who I went on a Twitch stream with specifically to do my Alex Jones voice for charity, because I was reading a lemon of Steven Crowder x Ben Shapiro with Alex Jones as the narrator.
Oh no.
For charity. And that was about the description I was given by them too. They were like, "Oh, you're one of the skeptics who doesn't suck."
Yeah, I want to plug something really quick before the end of the segment.
Okay.
If you are trying to get involved, I would recommend y'all check out rainbowpassage.org. Some individuals that I know are taking like basically one person at a time and getting them out of Florida, getting them out of these spaces that are dangerous, and like literally just physically going and getting them and moving them into safer places. It's a really small organization so far, and we're going to be having virtual Pride on Saturday, June 24th and Sunday, June 25th. So go check that out. Like, there's a Discord server you could join. There's going to be more updates coming on that.
Of people who do the same shit I just did last week.
Yeah, did you do a virtual Pride?
No. I was saying that.
The moving trans people out of a dangerous place thing. Like, yeah. You said you drove to Florida.
It's like, wait a minute. There's a group of people. There's some infrastructure here I could actually use.
Yeah, so it's really small. It's only started a couple months ago. Like, some streamers just decided that this needed to happen, and so it's just individuals getting together and helping other individuals. It would be great if someday we could build, group housing or something to that effect. But for now, it's literally just a rescue mission one at a time. So yeah, I mean, if you want to get involved with that, Suris, I think that they could absolutely use any more hands on deck, more organizers, more volunteers, not just your financial contributions, but if you do graphic design and you want to contribute to the website, or if you want to create logos to advertise for our Pride thing coming up later this month.
God, there's a whole pipeline thing that just popped into my head. I recently, and I'm not going to say which one for legal reasons, but I did apply to a VTuber organization. But one of the things that is stated in any contract that I would sign is, I'm going to talk about the shit that matters to me, and if that matters to me more than any money you can give me. So if I did happen to get into any of those, there is that thought that popped in my head of like, man, getting more exposure in the VTuber space and then casually throwing this at people in the VTuber space who listen to politics as osmosis but don't talk about it that much. Boy, that could be interesting to see metamorphosis from that.
Yep. Let's make it impossible to escape the politics. If it's every aspect of my life is saturated with anti-trans sentiment and transphobia, and I have to be afraid of going places, then I don't think that cis people should have a place that they can run to escape from news about trans people and trans lives and like Black lives and all these different issues. You know, I think that all of the art should be infused with politics, and until you step up and change things, I don't think you have permission to turn your brain off about it.
Fair enough. Well, thank you very much once more for being here. I greatly appreciate your time. Hopefully, you have a wonderful time with the rest of your stream. I don't know how much longer you're planning on going for.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I don't know how much longer I'm planning on going. You had mentioned that there was other stuff that you were going to cover, but I guess normally I do kind of dip out at like 8:30, so it's getting close here.
I've got an article on the far right turning on Marjorie Taylor Greene. I've got an update on the Florida situation where a federal judge decided that actually no, banning gender affirming care within the borders of your state is a dumb thing to do. And I've got some other stuff I got to talk about as well. So I've got at least 3 more topics I've got to cover on my end.
Yeah, good luck.
So thank you for coming on, and I will see you later.
We'll chat later. All right, have a good night, Suris.
You as well.